individuals and people in particular learning. Because I think we haven't just gone through a massive sort of disruption through technology, and now we're living in a post-COVID world. But what's been going on for a few decades now has been that people need new skill sets, and there's discussion, what are the prime skill sets on that. But one of the most striking parts or pieces I found in the book was the study about how much leadership or CEOs actually are aware of that their current workforce wants to learn and have actually a good drive to learn. Whereas, and I just worked on a project like that, a big transformation project, where there's a big discussion always about, well, we have to fire the people who can't keep up, and we have to hire new talent and new capabilities. That's how they like to phrase it. So tell us a bit about that study that actually shows that leadership doesn't seem to really understand its own workers, who are actually quite eager to learn and learn for the right reasons, rather than having to be fired.
No, I love this question. And I think the essence of what we're talking about now is understanding what individuals are capable of and interested in doing, and how they're perceived by managers and business leaders, and even how we build political and public policy organizations around it. So there was a study done by a group at Harvard Business School, led by, among others, Professor Joseph Fuller. It was published in Harvard Business Review last year. And they surveyed workers and managers in 11 countries. And I'll summarize their findings. Here's the way I read their findings, which is when they interviewed and surveyed workers around the world, and not just knowledge workers, but workers in all different types of occupations, manufacturing, service industries, obviously, as well as different services industries. What they found, and it's no surprise to me, is that most workers recognize the need to be adaptable. They recognize the need to learn new skills. They also recognize that their jobs, almost all of, I shouldn't say all of us will be working with and next to smart machines, robots, and AI if we're not doing that already. But in the same study, and some other studies that we've seen, when we interview managers and executives, they tell us that we're not sure the workforce is as adaptable as they need to be. I think what workers are looking for is, and this is the key word, I think, is the opportunity to adapt. I think all of us are looking for institutional models. Sorry, that's the way that I talk. I'm trained as an economist, and I have an MBA, and I also have a degree in international economics, so I slip into that lingo sometimes. But people are looking for institutional arrangements that support that. And I'll give a specific example of that. One of the things we talk about in the book is some of the disconnects in education and some of the disconnects in social policy. I'll summarize it this way. A disproportionate amount of our education in most of the world, not all the world, there are some countries in Europe and Asia, France, Germany, Singapore, Denmark, I think are good examples, where ongoing job training and ongoing job transition is part of the model and the social contract, if you will, among individual workers and businesses and government agencies. In other parts of the world, education is very much oriented towards the first part of our lives. You get a lot of educational entitlement between sort of 5 and 22. And after that, you sort of fall off a cliff. And that really doesn't take into account the whole notion of longevity. As our colleagues at London Business School, Linda Grattan and Andrew Scott, wrote their wonderful book, The 100-Year Life, looking at the demography of our times. I have 2 daughters in their 20s. God willing, they can expect to live to be 100. No surprise, our grandparents are in their 80s. But the average time in a job is 3 or 4 years. The half-life of a skill is 5 years or dropping. Many of us can expect to have 12 or 14 jobs or careers, which means that this ongoing process of reinvention, which is a little bit different than lifelong learning, is really important. And I think we're seeing this over and over again, this question of adaptability and how people are responding and how leaders are leading. And let me give one other example as we're getting started. In 2020, I know we're recording this early in 2021, we saw remarkable adaptability in the workforce. Right? We saw, in the U.S., where I have the data at my fingertips, we went from 5% of the workforce working remotely to 50%. That's 10x. We're seeing a lot of 10x as well, which we can go into. But we also saw something else. We saw the automotive industry being thrown the challenge of, in addition to making cars, can you put your capabilities into making ventilators? To me, that's a wonderful story of adaptability. A car is a very complicated machine, which is with about 2,000 parts. I didn't know that until we did the research. And a ventilator is another complicated machine with 700 parts. As you can expect, there isn't a lot of overlap between the parts in a car and the parts in a ventilator. There's a tiny bit. But what we were able to do, and what automotive workers and managers were able to do, was to sort of take a step forward and look at what their deep capabilities were, to design, to source, to assemble, to distribute, going from one complicated product, in one case the automobile, to a ventilator. And we've seen that kind of adaptability. And to me, that's just one example. I've talked about the institutional requirement. That's one example where recognizing that people are adaptable if we give them the opportunity and the support to actually exercise that adaptability. It also goes back to this first point that we're exploring, which is, what's the mental model we have? Individuals, I think, are looking for opportunity, and many business leaders are looking for the perfect fit, right? And they don't actually think of the workforce as flexible and as adaptable as it truly is, or it truly could be, if we organized and managed around that.